Called me an ugly whore and said no one would ever want to F me. He didn't like when I asked how I could both be unaffable and a whore. Girls who have rejected people, what's the worst way someone has taken it? My sister got followed home by a dude she rejected. He went up to the house and started talking to her kids and telling them he was their new dad. Luckily, real dad came out, in his police attire. Put a real quick end to that. My sister and the real dad are married, not divorced or anything. The guy followed her home from the hospital she works at, where he was a patient under her care. He made a move on her. She said no. There was no relationship between them besides nurse and patient. Well, maybe not in his eyes. I had actually heard of a lot of people doing this before, but I'd never had it happen to me, and when it did it was completely devastating. He told me I had to go out with him or he would kill himself. He then said goodbye, very convincingly, and emotionally turned his phone off and stopped picking up or answering any texts. I knew him from when we went to high school together, and so I actually had his best mates and his dad's phone numbers. I phoned them and sent the screenshots of the messages to them. Absolutely hysterical and worrying that he was in a gutter somewhere. However, it was very quickly discovered, by his livid father, that he was actually round the mates smoking weed, and he thought that this would at least get him a pity shag. What a complete and utter twat. We went on one date and I declined a second. A couple of days after that he called me and told me what I had been wearing that day. This went on for a couple of months. I'd literally never see him, but at least 3 times a week he'd know exactly what I wore. When I was a nanny, I was walking around with the baby in the pram and we visited a bookshop. A man in there started talking to me and then asked me out, very kindly, keeping my father's advice in mind about being kind when I have to reject men when they ask me out. I said that was a nice offer, but my boyfriend might not be too keen on it. His response to that was to lean in and try and kiss me. I told him to get the F off me. He then exploded with rage and started screaming in my face. I was saved by the bookstore employee. The man stormed out of the shop. I spent the next few hours shaking like a leaf. What a champion. He broke into my house and chased me into my bedroom, then spent 10 minutes shouting through my locked bedroom door that I should come out and have a reasonable conversation with him. Adult to adult. He shoved me into a wall and busted my head open. I was taking a break at work behind the building listening to music and enjoying the breeze, and co-worker I constantly tried to avoid because he was a creep started asking me out. I'd already been irritated because of annoying customers and the overbearing heat inside, so instead of the usual brush off reply, I snapped at him and made it clear I was in no way interested, had a boyfriend whom I loved, and that he needed to get the F out of my personal space. I went to walk away and he grabbed my arm to twist me around, trying to back me against the wall, and when I managed to finally rip my arm away and press him back to get him off me, he got pissed and shoved me. Back of my head hit the wall, split open about 1.5 inches, bled a lot, had to get about 7 stitches. He got fired and also arrested for assault. He tried to say I had hit him first, but luckily there was a camera around back that caught the whole thing. In high school I turned a guy down, so he went around spreading rumors that he tried to F me, but my vagina was deformed and practically closed up. He spent the rest of the year talking crap about how nasty I was, unclean, unshaven, etc. Sometime about 5 years ago, he tried to add me on Facebook and I blocked him. F that guy. I spent months trying to convince people I knew how to wash my rectum. I turned down a guy that was known for being the popular guy and I thought he was a bit of a dickhead. When he tried to kiss me I turned my head the other way, said I wasn't interested and walked off. He grabbed my hand, spat in my face and said I missed the best opportunity in my life and the only reason he tried to kiss me was because he pitied me. I'd gone out with a guy once that I'd met through a dating site, and we just didn't click. I told him exactly that, was very respectful of his feelings and wished him the best. He was not receptive, at all. He called me a whore, told me that he was going to find where I lived and push me into oncoming traffic. Really awful things. He wouldn't stop texting me horrible stuff about how I was a gigantic bitch, a total cunt for leading him on, and that he hoped that someone raped me. I blocked his number, which thankfully stopped the messages, reported him on the dating app, and thankfully never heard from him again. It was legit one of the scariest frigging things. Dude was unhinged. Guy asked me out during an Uber pool ride. I told him I wasn't interested and he started moving closer and asking me why I wasn't interested and what was wrong with him. It was uncomfortable to say the least. My Uber driver, for some reason, thought it was hilarious to see me pressed against the door to try and get away from this random guy invading my personal space. Thankfully no one has threatened my life. He sent me an email with a 3-page essay attached. It was written entirely in third person recounting his first rejection by a girl named Tanya at the age of 16. There were a lot of solitary beach walks, she's the perfect girl talk, him not taking no for answer, and the story eventually ends with him drinking antifreeze, slipping into a coma, hospitalized and eventually recuperating, only to tell poor Tanya that she could avoided his and his parents' pain by agreeing to date him. The email said, "So you know what you are getting into." I was 19 and did not see this extreme level of crazy coming, but knew I needed to really make how I felt clear. I immediately called him to reiterate that I do not want to be with him. I no longer want to be friends with him, and if he contacted me again I would change my number. I let a friend of his know what was going on. 5 days later he called from a different number to tell me he was out in the country, one with a gun to his head, and if I didn't agree to be with him then he would pull the trigger. I lied and convinced him I had to leave because I had a family emergency, aunt sick in the hospital, but we would talk the next day. Had mutual friend call him and report back as is suspected he was full of human excrement. Sure enough I was right, he was totally fine. He called the next day and with the most sing-song creepy serial killer tone said, "You think you're so nice. What type of human being doesn't agree to what someone needs when they tell you they are going to kill themselves? You piece of crap." I lost the plot, told him I'm changing my numbers, and the next time he contacts me it will be the police involved. He just laughed the whole time and told me he hopes I die alone, like I deserve. Radio silence for 6 years until I'm getting married. I have an email from him. "Hey, wow, it's been a while. How are you? Would be so great to catch up sometime. Psychotic rectum." Obviously I never replied and changed my email again. I also once had a guy send me hundreds of text messages calling me all kinds of names, cursing me out and threatening me because I didn't have sex with him after our entirely lackluster first and last date. I didn't even bother reading beyond the first 50, just let him go on and on until I blocked and mass deleted. Still, it was nuts. He killed a stray cat that he found was taking shelter in his basement. He later told me it was my fault and that I had caused him to do it. I wish he would have just threatened me directly or started some rumors, not kill an innocent animal over it. Went into a gas station to get my mom some lottery tickets and the cashier asks for my ID while holding my ID. He begins questioning my marital status among other personal details. I told him I wasn't interested and paid. He gives me my ID back. I go to the car, start it up and begin to tell my little sister what happened. As she was waiting in the car and she starts yelling that someone is coming over. Now the cashier is tapping my window and yelling, "Are we friends?" I put the car in reverse and drove away. While I don't know for certain who did it, the next day I had my tire slashed. I was told that the way my tire looked seemed like it was most likely intentional. Unfortunately this was like 8 years ago, so I no longer have the picture of the tire. As a precaution, I had some of my male friends go by and tell him to leave me alone. I never went back to that gas station and didn't have any issues with the guy after that. The worst part was, I was 18 and when I told my mom what happened regarding the guy harassing me, she didn't believe me. F you Bill, you're single because you're a creep. I was spending time with an ex because he insisted he needed the company and we were still on friendly terms. I ended up having to kick him out of my house. He was acting crazy, keeping me up in non-sexual ways, talking and stuff when I told him I needed to sleep and would kick him out if he continued disrupting my rest. He spent the following 3 days sleeping outside of my house and only left to get suitcases of his crap, which he subsequently left by my back door. He would repeat this routine every few months until I moved, insisting that he would hold my bike hostage until I stopped being a bee and let him into my house. Needless to say, he never set foot in my home again. Backpacking with my girlfriend. We are both women and staying in a hostel, 6-bed mixed dorm. All is well until it is just me, my girlfriend and an old Indian guy in the room, who is ridiculously drunk. We ordered pizza that night and he started shouting at us for not ordering him pizza in the common room. Eventually he started telling people he wanted to marry my girlfriend, asked me if he could marry her, to which I said no, go to bed, you're drunk, etc. Anything to get him away from us. We went to bed eventually. He kept talking and talking about how much he liked my girlfriend. I asked him to stop. He was making her uncomfortable and repeatedly said go to sleep, which he didn't. He proceeded to start masturbating over me and saying my girlfriend's name, as I was bottom bunk. My girlfriend was top bunk. It was horrible. My girlfriend threw a bottle of water off his head and we both ran out of the room to go to the reception desk to complain. He followed us. We had to complain about him masturbating while he was stood there. He flipped out, threatened to murder us both, said he would kill the guy on reception, kept saying why would I masturbate over you, you're disgusting. The hostel kicked him out, gave us a private room, but he stayed and argued for hours. Even the police had to come. So I really liked this guy in high school. He was kind of edgy and I was a pretty good kid. He asked if I wanted to skip school with him and naturally I was all for it. I walked to his house after getting dropped off at school and we watched movies. He eventually turns on porn while we are kissing and making out, and tries to put his hand down my pants. I was really nervous because I was a virgin and hadn't even touched a penis or anything. I found my way out of there pretty quickly. I kind of just stopped talking to him, really because I wasn't ready to have sex, and he decides to tell everyone he took my virginity and I was bad in bed. I was mortified. He's now a meth addict. The comment of the day is from Emma. Emma wrote, why do you only have 400 subs? That is a good question, Emma. I think the reason for this is that I don't use frogs on my thumbnails. Anyway, thanks for watching Radio Reddit. Please hit the subscribe button and activate the notification, else I might have to chase you into your bedroom and we have to have a conversation from adult to adult. Please don't reject me. I can't handle it. I am a poor little butterfly of a YouTube channel. Give me a chance. Maybe we can be friends. How about BFFs?